So we are now at that part of the moving forward series where we're going to be talking about teams that made it to the playoffs. And whenever we get to this stage of the moving forward series, what I'm going to do is going to do teams that got first eliminated in the playoffs and then so on and so forth before we get into the eventual MLS Cup champion, which is the Columbus Crew. So the first team that got eliminated in the playoffs this season is the Montreal Impact, although their season officially didn't end until December because they were one of the four teams that was involved in the CONCACAF Champions League, and they were also one of the three teams that got eliminated in the quarterfinal. Now, in terms of their overall record, they finished the season with an 8-2-13 record with 26 points. They scored 33 goals, but they gave up 43 goals this season in the league, which is the most in the Eastern Conference, and the goal differential is minus 10. They finished ninth in the Eastern Conference, which got themselves a spot in the playing round, but they got eliminated in the playing round by the New England Revolution, and they also got eliminated in the quarterfinal of the CONCACAF Champions League by Olimpia. Now, as much as I know that was definitely not a good feeling for the Impact being a team that got eliminated in the CONCACAF Champions League by a Central American team. I mean, if you're an MLS team and you get eliminated in the CONCACAF Champions League, you got to make sure you get eliminated by a Mexican side, not some Central American side. However, that being said, I feel like, this was really the best for Montreal to get eliminated in the CONCACAF Champions League because they were well into their offseason. I feel like that game against Olimpia was just a distraction of the fact that since they're already into the off season, they don't really need to play a competitive game right between the middle of their off season. And knowing the fact that even if they did beat Olimpia, they got to play Tigres in the semifinal. And unless if they're going to do some miraculous thing like they did a couple of years ago against Pachuca in the semifinal of the CONCACAF Champions League, I just don't see how they're going to get past Tigres, especially in a one-legged game, and especially how good Tigres look against NYCFC. Yeah, there's really not much chance I can give Montreal in terms of that one-leg game against Tigres, and that I feel like it was just for the best for their season to pretty much end there. Now, in terms of the MVP of this team, it's got to be Romell Kyoto. I mean, this is probably one of the best signing that Montreal has done in the past couple of years. Bring Kyoto, who was kind of an outcast at Houston, and he has really revitalized his career and look just as good as he was a couple of years ago with the Dynamo, and really the only player that is consistent in terms of the attacking end for this Impact team. The disappointment is got to be Bojan, and there was definitely some candidate I could have gone in terms of disappointment. I could have gone with Victor Wanyama, who has been a huge flop ever since he joined the Montreal Impact, and then I could have also gone with Mason Toye, which Mason Toye is another guy that I thought with a change of scenery, now he's going to Montreal, maybe he can rediscover that form that he had with Minnesota last year. Did not happen. Didn't even get into the starting 11 in most of the game, or even come off the bench for most of the game. But I'm going to go with Bojan simply because, again, for the second year in a row, I feel like this signing that they, of course, bought a couple of years ago, getting Bojan to Montreal, has just been a huge flop, and that this second year, hopefully he Montreal was hope that they can prove that, or they were hoping that he can, of course, prove that why when he come to the Impact will be a great player on the attacking end and and could be a good attacking option for this team. And yeah, it just did not happen whatsoever. I mean, as much as he did score some amazing goals this season for the Impact, he did not even get into the top assist leader chart. And for a guy that they were hoping could be also a distribute player, not even getting on the top assist leader chart is kind of a little bit embarrassing for him. And that, heading into this offseason, obviously, Bojan, he did not had his contract accepted, and he was one of the couple of players that had his contract declined by the Impact, although the Impact did say that they were going to try to renew his contract. But for me, if I'm the Montreal Impact, I would probably not even think about renewing his contract, and that just let him walk pretty much. I mean, it just hasn't really worked out with him with this team, and I just feel like they don't really need to try to bring him back and hope that the third time is finally the charm and the third year is finally where he is going to get things going with this team. Now, in terms of the top goal scorer, you got Romel Kyoto leads the team with 8 goals, followed by Maxi Urruti with 5 goals, Sofia Taidir, who's no longer with the team, with 4 goals, followed by Bojan and Lassit Lapinainen, all with 4 goals apiece. Top assist leader, got Sofia Taidir, again, no longer with the team, with 6 goals, followed by Romel Kyoto with 6 assists. Oh, did I say that Sofia Taidir got 6 goals? I meant 6 assists there. Then you got Emmanuel Maciel with 3 assists, Orgi Okwanko with 2 assists, and Maxi Urruti finish off that list with 1 assist in 5th place. Now, what went right for the Montreal Impact? Well, they made it to the playoffs. I mean, this is the first time in 4 years that they, of course, made it to the playoffs. Now, of course, they got the benefit of the doubt that because of the fact that the playoffs in the Eastern Conference have now got 10 teams in it, and the fact that in past years, if they were in the they finished the position that they were this season, they wouldn't have made it to the playoffs. But that being said, I thought that they definitely deserved to be in the playoffs because of the fact that they really started well and that they kind of climb as high as 5th place in the Eastern Conference. And there was a spell where they actually won 4 out of their 6 games, and they were able to get 12 out of the possible 18 points during that stretch. I mean, they were definitely doing very well, and that there was some people that saying that maybe they could be a dark horse heading into the Eastern Conference. And then obviously probably the biggest thing that went right for the Impact has to be beating Saprissa in the CONCACAF Champions League to move on to the quarterfinal. I mean, if you talk about a team that is pretty much the Giants and probably the toughest team to beat out of Central America, it has to be Saprissa. And the fact that I was shocked the fact that Montreal was able to beat Saprissa and was actually able to go down to Costa Rica and get a win against Saprissa in front of their own backyard, and then get a 0-0 draw at home to win in those 2 legs. I definitely did not expect that the Impact was going to do that, but they did, and that I think is probably one of the best moments for Thierry Henry in terms of his team for the Montreal Impact this season. Now, what went wrong for the Impact this season? Well, there was definitely a lot that went wrong. First of all, obviously, the defense was absolutely horrendous, with them giving up 43 goals this season, which again was the worst in the Eastern Conference. And despite the fact that Henry was going with a very defensive approach pretty much throughout the season, yeah, that still didn't help the fact that they still gave up so much goals this season. And then it could have been a lot worse if it wasn't for Clement Diop, who I thought, as much as he was part of the team with the worst defensive record, he was definitely on his game and probably one of their best player. And if it wasn't for Diop making those incredible saves in some of these games, this number of 43 goals that they concede could have been a lot higher than it is then. There was very little attacking power, which, you know, again, 33 goals on paper, it looked like that's pretty decent, and it's right in the average mark in terms of goals that's scored by each of the team. However, when you get it in a deeper side, they still have some trouble in terms of goal scoring, and a lot of those goals that they scored this season has really come in garbage time when they are in a losing position. So when you, of course, are able to score goals, which, you know, usually it's a good thing, but if you're only able to score goals during those garbage time and able to maybe nick like a goal or get a couple of consolation goal in a losing effort, that doesn't really helps the fact that, yeah, the attack is really that good, and that it just kind of makes no sense of why they were able to be scoring those goals in garbage time, and that they can't really do it when it really kind of matters. Now, the other thing that went wrong for the Montreal Impact, so I talked about how the first half of the season they were definitely on a good run. The second half of the season, yeah, that's when things kind of fell apart for this Impact team, and that, you know, the second half run was just absolutely horrendous, and that there was really a stretch where they were in such a free fall that they could actually get themselves eliminated in the regular season, and that it actually only took them to the final day for them to able to get the win against DC United to get themselves into ninth place and into the play-in round. So yeah, if they didn't win that game, and that was also the game where they actually trailed twice, and they had to come back twice to eventually win it in the 89th minute. If they didn't win that game, they would have been knocked out of the playoffs, and their season would have ended at there. And for a team that started so well and was consistently being above the red line, to have yourself getting knocked out on the final day and finish below the red line, that has to be a huge gut punching feeling. And that I feel like if the Impact did not make it to the playoffs, the opinions of how Thierry Henry did in this first season is going to be a lot different than him, of course, making the playoffs and get this team to the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. Now, moving forward for this team, obviously the biggest talking point about this team besides the offseason is the rebrand. I mentioned it before, the fact that this could be the very last time I could actually talk about the Montreal Impact and have the name that it is right now, because there is definitely a lot of rumors saying that they are going to change their name, and unfortunately it's going to be in a name that, as I said before, not one that I really enjoy, with the way that they're going to follow the trend of all these MLS teams going with the European generic FC, SC, and United kind of name. But hopefully that won't be the case, and we shall see maybe in a couple of weeks or even in a couple of months when they eventually do announce the rebrand what exactly this team is going to be in terms of the name and also the color scheme of their team. And then the second thing that's moving forward for this team is how will Thierry Henry do in his second year. Now, I'm not really going to judge him that much in terms of his first year. And you know how I just said the fact that the opinions would have been different if the Impact didn't make it to the playoffs compared to they made it to the playoffs on Thierry Henry. Well, in some way, I guess, I think with how chaotic this first year has been and the fact that Montreal, like all these Canadian teams, they have definitely been through a lot with the way that they barely been able to play games at home, and they only had that free home game where they was playing Canadian team in phase one of the phase one of the season, and after the MLS's back tournament, before they had to pretty much spend all their time playing at a neutral venue and play at Red Bull Arena. That has to be very tough on the players, and just not only physically but emotionally, the way that they were basically forced to be playing in an area that they're not based in, and a lot of these players had to stay in a hotel for that a very long time and aren't able to talk to their family members or even visit their family members. That has to be very stressful in terms of it. But despite that, they still, of course, made it to the playoffs, and I think if you're a Montreal fan, you'll be happy with the way that the team was able to get themselves back into the playoffs. But now, heading into the second year, you hope that there is going to be maybe a little bit more progress going forward, and we shall see in his second year whether or not if Thierry Henry is going to continue to build on this team. Now, the third thing moving forward for this team is that in order for them to make some progress, they definitely need some reinforcement in pretty much everywhere. I mean, when you look at this team, I really don't see that this is a team that heading into next year, if we're not going to go once again with an extended playoffs, I really don't see this team making back to the playoffs. Like, there is so much holes that is in this roster from top to bottom. When you look at the defense, besides Louis Binks, there's really isn't a lot of good, reliable defenders that is on their team. Midfield is also a bit of a problem too. I mentioned how Victor Wanyama, they was hoping that when they bought him in last offseason, he's gonna really be a force in the midfield. Yeah, it did not happen whatsoever. And going forward on the attack, as I mentioned before, besides Romel Kyoto, there isn't really anybody there on that attack that you could say, well, he is going to be a guy that's going to be a difference maker for this team. Now, speaking of the attacking end, they have already made a big move this off season after bringing Georgi Mihailovic from the Chicago Fire, and they paid him $1 million of general allocation money to bring him from the Fire to the Impact, which, as I said, I feel like that is clearly an overpay. And as much as Mihailovic, his ceiling is definitely high, and he has the potential to be a very decent player, and I can really see him making the jump to Europe in a couple of seasons. It is a big gamble, knowing the fact that he only had his breakout season last year, and you really hope that he can have another breakout year heading into his second season. And for a guy that you pay $1 million in general allocation money, I'm assuming Mihajlovic is going to be a regular starter in terms of the spot, despite the fact that, you know, him and Sejdic is going to be really battling for that number 10 spot. But at the end of the day, I think Mihajlovic is probably going to win that spot because, again, you don't bring a guy and sign a guy and pay $1 million of general allocation money to leave him on the bench. And if that is the case, then this is gonna be one of the biggest flop and probably one of the biggest mistake that an MLS team would make by paying so much money for a guy, and then at the end of the day they just didn't even get them some playing time and basically kept them on the bench for majority of the season. But there you have it. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? If you're a Montreal Impact fan, what do you think went right with this team? What went wrong? And most importantly, moving forward, what is your team going to look like heading into next season? But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.